The white lights in the medical bay never turned off. They hummed softly above Marcus Reed's bed, where he lay still as death. Tubes ran from his arms to machines that beeped and clicked in steady rhythms. His face looked pale under the harsh light, but his chest rose and fell with each breath. Dr. Yana Kresh stood outside the glass wall, watching him through the clear barrier. She had been the chief medical officer on Harmony's Edge Station for 12 years. In all that time, she had never seen anything like what was happening to the human in that bed. "The pathogen is still spreading," she said to her assistant, Dr. Vex. "But it's not killing him. It's changing him." Dr. Vex looked at the readings on his tablet. The numbers made no sense. His cellular structure is adapting. The alien organism isn't attacking his body. It's joining with it. 3 days ago, Marcus Reed had been a normal human salvage operator. He worked the dangerous outer rim, pulling valuable materials from dead ships and abandoned stations. It was risky work that few species wanted to do. Humans seemed to love it. Reed had been responding to a distress signal from a research vessel that had gone silent near the Void Nebula. When his team found the ship, everyone aboard was dead. But Reed had insisted on going inside anyway. He said someone might still be alive in the sealed sections. That was typical human behavior. Other species would have marked the ship as lost and moved on. Humans always wanted to check one more time. Reed had found a survivor, a young researcher who had been hiding in a storage compartment for 6 days. While carrying her to safety, Reed had been exposed to whatever had killed the rest of the crew. The pathogen had entered his bloodstream through a small cut on his hand. Now he lay in the most secure isolation unit on the station. The medical team had no idea what the organism might do to him or if it could spread to other species. The safety protocols were clear. No contact until they understood the threat. That was the problem. Outside the medical bay, in the corridor that led to the isolation units, a large figure paced back and forth. Zethkar was tall even for a Velthari, standing nearly 8 feet high. His reptilian features were sharp and angular, with golden eyes that missed nothing. Scales covered his body in overlapping patterns that shifted color slightly with his mood. Right now, they showed deep blues and grays, colors that meant worry and frustration. He had been pacing for 3 days. "Sir, you need to leave this area," said Security Officer Bran. The young Ternan looked nervous. Velthari were known to be dangerous when upset, and this one was clearly very upset. Zethkar stopped pacing and looked down at the security officer. "I am not leaving. The medical staff has been very clear. No one is allowed near the isolation units. The risk of contamination is too high. I do not care about their risk assessments." Dr. Kresh heard the conversation through the corridor monitors. She sighed and walked out to face the stubborn Velthari. She had dealt with difficult families before, but this situation was different. Zethkar wasn't family. He was Reed's work partner. The two had been working together for 3 years. That was unusual. Most salvage crews change members often. The work was dangerous, and not everyone could handle the stress. But Reed and Zethkar had formed a partnership that everyone in the salvage business knew about. Velthari were not known for forming strong emotional bonds. They were practical creatures who valued efficiency and logic. Their relationships were usually based on mutual benefit rather than affection. But something about working with Reed had changed Zethkar. "You cannot help him by standing here," Dr. Kresh said as she approached. "The best thing you can do is let us work." Zethkar's scales shifted to darker shades. "He would not leave me. This is different. This is a medical emergency. We have protocols. Your protocols do not account for humans," Zethkar interrupted. "They are not like other species. They do not heal the same way." Dr. Kresh frowned. "What do you mean?" "Humans need their pack. When they are hurt or sick, They need others nearby. Reed told me this once, after I was injured on Kepler Station. He said, humans who are alone when they are sick often die, even when their injuries should not be fatal. That's just superstition, Dr. Kresh said. Modern medicine doesn't, is it? Zethkar's golden eyes fixed on her. Look at his readings. Is he improving? Dr. Kresh hesitated. The truth was that Reed's condition was not improving. The pathogen continued to spread through his system. His body was adapting, but the process seemed unstable. His brain activity showed signs of distress, even though he was unconscious. The treatment takes time, she said. How much time? And what happens if he dies while you wait? Security Officer Brand stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your quarters. You're disrupting medical operations. Zethkar looked at the much smaller officer. For a moment, Dr. Kresh thought the Velthari might simply push past him. Instead, Zethkar nodded slowly. I will return to my quarters, he said. Bram looked relieved. Thank you for your cooperation. But Dr. Kresh noticed something in Zethkar's tone that made her uneasy. The Velthari was agreeing too easily. In her experience, when someone gave up that quickly, they weren't really giving up at all. She watched Zethkar walk away down the corridor. His movements were smooth and purposeful. Too purposeful. Double the security on this section, she told Bran. I don't think we've seen the last of him. Back in the isolation unit, Marcus Reed's machines continued their steady beeping. The pathogen moved through his bloodstream, changing his cells one by one. His body temperature had dropped 2 degrees below normal, but somehow his organs were functioning better than before. Dr. Kresh returned to her observations, but she couldn't shake what Zethkar had said. Humans were social creatures. Everyone knew that. But could emotional isolation actually affect medical treatment? She pulled up Reed's psychological profiles. Like most long-range salvage operators, he scored high for independence and self-reliance. But he also showed strong attachment patterns. He formed deep bonds with his partners and crew members. Maybe there was something to the Veltharis' concerns after all. As the station's night cycle began, Dr. Kresh made a note to review the isolation protocols in the morning. Perhaps there was a way to allow limited contact while maintaining safety standards. She had no idea that by morning, the question would be moot. Zethkar had no intention of waiting for protocol reviews. He was already planning something that would change everything. Zethkar's quarters were small and simple, like all temporary housing on Harmony's Edge station. A bed, a desk, and a small storage unit. Nothing more. He sat at the desk, staring at the station schematics on his portable display. The blueprints showed every corridor, every room, and every maintenance shaft in the station. Zethkar had studied them for hours, tracing pathways with his clawed finger. There had to be a way to reach Reed without going through the guarded medical bay entrance. His people, the Velthari, had evolved as tunnel hunters on their home world. Their ancestors had chased prey through underground cave systems, digging new passages when needed. Modern Velthari rarely used these skills, but Zethkar remembered the old ways. His grandfather had taught him during childhood. Visits to the ancient hunting grounds. The medical bay was located on the station's inner ring, surrounded by thick walls designed to contain dangerous materials. But every structure had weaknesses. Zethkar found what he was looking for in the maintenance section diagrams. A network of access shafts ran behind the medical bay walls. These tunnels were used by repair crews to maintain the station's systems. They were too small for most species to use comfortably, but Velthari were flexible. Zethkar could fit. The closest access point was 3 levels down, in the cargo bay area. From there, he would need to dig through approximately 15 meters of station wall to reach the back of Reed's isolation unit. 15 meters of reinforced metal and composite materials. It would not be easy, but it was possible. Zethkar waited until the night shift began. The station operated on a 26-hour cycle to accommodate multiple species needs. During the quiet hours, fewer crew members moved through the corridors. Security patrols followed predictable patterns. He made his way to the cargo bay access panel he had identified. The cover was secured with standard fasteners that his claws could manipulate. Within minutes, he was inside the maintenance shaft network. The tunnels were dark and cramped, filled with pipes and conduits that hummed with power. Zethkar moved carefully, following the path he had memorized from the schematics. His enhanced vision allowed him to see clearly in the dim emergency lighting dot. After 20 minutes of crawling, he reached the section directly behind the medical bay. The wall here was thicker than the others, reinforced with radiation shielding and containment barriers. But metal was still metal. With the right tools and enough time, anything could be cut. Zethkar had brought tools from his salvage kit: plasma cutters, molecular saws, and fusion welders, equipment designed to break through the hulls of dead ships. The station's builders had never expected someone to use such tools from inside the maintenance shafts. He began with a plasma cutter set to its lowest power setting. The beam was barely visible, but it slowly ate through the metal. The work was delicate. Too much power would trigger the station's sensors and bring security running. Too little would take forever. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Reed's condition was growing worse. His cellular mutation rate has increased by 30%, Dr. Vex reported as he checked the morning readings. The pathogen is accelerating its integration process. Dr. Kresh studied the displays with growing concern. The alien organism was rewriting Reed's DNA at an unprecedented pace. His immune system wasn't fighting the invasion. Instead, it seemed to be helping it. "This shouldn't be possible," she muttered. "Human biology isn't compatible with most alien pathogens. That's why cross-species infections are rare." "Maybe this pathogen is different," suggested Dr. Vex. The research vessel it came from was studying genetic adaptation. Perhaps they created something designed to work with multiple species. Dr. Kresh reviewed the limited information they had about the dead research ship. The crew had been working on something called Project Bridge, a study of how different species might share biological traits. The project files were corrupted, but the fragments suggested they had been experimenting with engineered organisms. "If that's true," Dr. Kresh said, "then Reed might be the test subject for their final experiment." The implications were terrifying and fascinating at the same time. If the pathogen could successfully integrate with human biology, it might create something entirely new. But if the process went wrong, Reed would die in ways that conventional medicine couldn't prevent. Reed's brain scans showed increasing activity in areas associated with stress and anxiety. Even unconscious, his mind seemed to know that something was wrong with his body. His heart rate had been climbing steadily for the past 6 hours. "Should we increase the sedation?" Dr. Vex asked. "No. Heavy sedation might interfere with his body's adaptation process. We need to find another way to keep him calm." But what could calm an unconscious patient? Music therapy had limited success with humans. Environmental controls could adjust temperature and lighting, but Reed's vital signs hadn't responded to those changes. Dr. Kresh thought about her conversation with Zethkar. The Velthari had insisted that humans needed their pack when they were sick. Medical literature supported the idea that social contact could affect healing in social species. But allowing contact with Reed was impossible given the contamination risk, or was it? She called up the station's communication systems. Perhaps they could establish audio contact between Reed and Zethkar. The isolation unit speakers could carry sound without risking physical contamination. But when she tried to locate Zethkar, the station's computer couldn't find him. His quarters were empty. The corridor sensors showed him leaving his room during the night shift, but after that, the trail went cold. Where is he? She wondered aloud. Security Officer Bran appeared on her communication screen. Dr. Kresh, we've been looking for the Velthari all morning. He's not in any of the public areas. The docking bay confirms his ship is still here, so he hasn't left the station. Dr. Kresh felt a chill of worry. Velthari were excellent at hiding when they wanted to disappear. Their natural camouflage and hunting instincts made them nearly invisible in the right environment. Expand the search, she ordered. Check the maintenance areas and service tunnels. He might be trying to find another way to reach the medical bay. 3 levels below, Zethkar continued his careful work. The plasma cutter had carved through 2 meters of wall during the night. The metal was thick and layered with different materials, each requiring different cutting techniques. He had to stop frequently to avoid overheating the surrounding structures. Too much heat would show up on the station's thermal sensors. He worked in short bursts, allowing the metal to cool between cuts. The work reminded him of his salvage operations with Reed. The human had taught him patience when dealing with delicate extractions. Slow and steady, Reed always said. The cargo isn't going anywhere, and neither are we. Reed had a talent for staying calm under pressure. During their 3 years together, they had faced collapsed ships, radiation storms, and hostile scavenger crews. Reed never panicked, never rushed. He thought through each problem and found solutions that kept them both alive. Now Reed was dying, and Zethkar was the one who had to find a solution. By the time the day shift arrived, he had cut through nearly half the wall. The remaining distance was the most dangerous part. The inner layers were the medical bay's actual containment barriers. Breaking through them might trigger alarms or compromise the isolation system, but Zethkar had come too far to stop now. Reed needed his pack, and Zethkar was going to make sure he got it. The Velthari settled in for another day of careful, patient digging. Above him, the medical staff searched for answers they wouldn't find in their computers or protocols. The solution to Reed's crisis was coming through the wall, one careful cut at a time. On the 6th day, Zethkar's claws finally scraped against the inner wall of Reed's isolation unit. He had been working steadily through the layers of station hull, pausing only when security patrols came too close to his access points. The final barrier was thinner than the others, a composite material designed to be transparent to sensors while blocking physical contact. Through the small hole he had made, Zethkar could see into the medical unit. Reed lay motionless on the bed, surrounded by machines that blinked and hummed in the sterile white light. Tubes and wires connected his body to monitoring equipment that tracked every function. But what struck Zethkar most was how small Reed looked. The human had always seemed larger than his actual size, full of energy and confidence. Now he appeared fragile and lost in the medical equipment. Zethkar carefully widened the opening until it was large enough to see and speak through clearly. The hole was barely 10 centimeters across, too small to pose a contamination risk, but sufficient for contact. "Reed," he said softly. The machines around the bed immediately began beeping faster. Reed's head turned slightly toward the sound, though his eyes remained closed. "Reed, I am here." On the monitors, Reed's heart rate stabilized. His breathing became deeper and more regular. The stress indicators that had been climbing for days suddenly dropped to normal levels. In the medical bay's control room, alarms began sounding. Dr. Kresh rushed to the monitoring station where Dr. Vex was staring at the displays in confusion. "What's happening?" she demanded. Reed's vital signs just changed dramatically. All his stress markers dropped, brain activity shifted to more normal patterns, and his cellular mutation rate decreased by 40%. Dr. Kresh looked at the readings. After days of watching Reed's condition deteriorate, the sudden improvement was shocking. What could cause such a rapid change? "I don't know," Nothing in his treatment has changed. But look at this. Dr. Vex pointed to the audio sensors. There's sound coming from inside the isolation unit. They listened to the audio feed. A low, rumbling voice was speaking in the careful, measured tones that Velthari used for important communications. "That's Zethkar," Dr. Kresh said. "But how is he inside the unit? The seals haven't been broken." Dr. Vex was already running diagnostic scans on the isolation chamber. Within minutes, the results appeared on his screen. There's a small breach in the rear wall. It looks like someone cut through from the maintenance shafts. Dr. Kresh felt a mixture of anger and amazement. He dug through 15 meters of station hull. The breach is only 10 centimeters across. No contamination risk, but sufficient for audio and visual contact. The implications hit Dr. Kresh immediately. The improvement in Reed's condition wasn't coincidental. The presence of his partner was actually helping the medical treatment. Should we seal the breach? Dr. Vex asked Dr. Kresh watch Reed's monitors as Zethkar continued speaking. Every vital sign was better than it had been in days. The pathogen's integration process was proceeding more smoothly. Reed's brain activity showed signs of REM sleep for the first time since his arrival. "No," she said finally. "We monitor and we learn." Through the small opening, Zethkar could see Reed's improved condition. The human's face had more color and his breathing was steady. The machines made softer sounds now, less urgent than before. "You are going to be fine," Zethkar said. "Your body is strong. It knows how to adapt." Reed's lips moved slightly, though no sound came out. His eyes moved beneath closed lids as if he was trying to see his partner. Zethkar had seen Reed sleep during their long salvage missions. The human often talked in his sleep when he was worried or excited about a job. He would mumble about cargo manifests, safety procedures, or crew rotations. But when he was calm and felt safe, Reed slept silently. The silence now was a good sign. "Do you remember our first job together?" Zethkar asked. "That derelict freighter near the Cassini Drift. You insisted on checking every cargo pod, even though most of the ship was flooded with radiation." Reed's heart monitor showed a slight increase, but not from stress. The pattern suggested he was listening. "You found those medical supplies in the shielded section. Enough vaccines to save 1,000 colonists on Remy Station. I told you it was not profitable cargo, but you said profit was not always about credits." Zethkar had been puzzled by Reed's attitude at first. Velthari approached salvage as a business transaction. Find valuable materials, extract them efficiently, sell them for the best price. Reed treated each job like a rescue mission. "You taught me that every piece of cargo was someone's hope," Zethkar continued. "That family pictures mattered as much as rare metals. That we were not just taking things from dead ships. We were saving pieces of lives." Dr. Kresh listened to the conversation through the medical bay's audio system. She had never heard a Velthari speak with such emotion. Their species was known for practical, logical communication. But Zethkar's voice carried tones she had never heard from his kind before. "The pathogen integration is stabilizing," Dr. Vex reported. "His cellular adaptation has reached a steady state. The alien organism is no longer spreading randomly. It's following specific patterns." "What kind of patterns?" Dr. Vex enhanced the cellular analysis on his display. "It looks like the pathogen is enhancing Reed's existing biology rather than replacing it. Muscle density is increasing. Neural connections are being strengthened. Sensory organs are becoming more sensitive." Dr. Kresh realized what they were seeing. It's not a pathogen at all. It's an enhancement. The research ship was working on genetic adaptation, Dr. Vex said. Maybe they created something that could improve biological functions rather than just study them. Through the breach in the wall, Zethkar continued his steady conversation with Reed. He talked about their successful missions, the crews they had saved, the impossible jobs they had completed together. His voice never wavered, never showed doubt. When you wake up, we have new contracts waiting. 3 deep salvage operations in the Vega system. Dangerous work, but profitable. The kind of jobs that other crews will not take. Reed's hand moved slightly on the bed. His fingers closed as if grasping something. The first ship is a research vessel that went dark near a black hole. The second is a luxury liner that collided with an asteroid. The third is classified, but the pay is exceptional. Dr. Kresh made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. She activated the communication system to Reed's isolation unit. "Zethkar," she said through the speakers. The Velthari looked up, searching for the source of the voice. "I know you can hear me. I want you to know that Reed's condition has improved dramatically since you arrived. The medical data suggests that your presence is actually helping his recovery." Zethkar's scales shifted to lighter colors, a sign of relief among his people. "I should arrest you for violating quarantine protocols," Dr. Kresh continued. "But instead, I'm going to ask you to stay. Whatever you're doing, it's working." "I am doing what Reed would do for me," Zethkar replied through the small opening. Dr. Kresh understood. In 3 years of partnership, Reed had taught the Velthari something that his own species rarely learned. He had shown Zethkar the value of loyalty that went beyond profit, beyond logic, beyond safety protocols. Now that lesson was saving Reed's life. As the station's day cycle continued, Reed's recovery accelerated. The alien enhancement integrated smoothly with his biology, guided by the calm stability that Zethkar's presence provided. The process that had seemed deadly was revealing itself as miraculous, but the most important discovery was yet to come. When Reed finally opened his eyes, they would learn that the enhancement had given him abilities that no human had ever possessed. Reed's eyes opened on the 8th day. They were still brown, still human, but something was different. Dr. Kresh noticed it immediately when she checked on him that morning. His pupils responded normally to light, but there was a depth to his gaze that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Reed," she said through the intercom. "How do you feel?" Reed blinked slowly and turned his head toward her voice. When he spoke, his words were clear and strong. "Like I've been sleeping for a very long time. You've been unconscious for 8 days. Do you remember what happened?" Reed's forehead creased as he searched his memory. The research ship. There was a survivor, a young scientist. She was infected with something. I carried her to safety. His expression shifted to concern. "Is she alive?" "Yes, she recovered completely. The organism didn't affect her species the same way it affected you." Through the small hole in the wall, Zethkar's voice rumbled softly. Reed's face brightened immediately. He turned toward the sound with a smile that transformed his entire appearance. "Zeth, I should have known you'd find a way in here. The doctor said I was not cleared for interaction. Since when do you follow rules you don't agree with?" Dr. Kresh watched this exchange with fascination. Reed showed no surprise at hearing his partner's voice through the wall. It was as if he had been aware of Zethkar's presence, even while unconscious. "Reed, we need to run some tests," Dr. Kresh said. "The organism that infected you has integrated with your biology. We need to understand what changes have occurred." "I can tell you some of them," Reed said, sitting up in bed with surprising ease. "My hearing is much better. I can hear conversations in the corridor outside this room. My vision is sharper too. And I can sense—" He paused, looking confused. "Sense what?" Dr. Kresh prompted. "Emotions. I can feel what you're feeling right now. You're curious but worried. Excited about the medical implications, but concerned about the risks." Dr. Kresh felt a chill. "That's not possible." Reed looked directly at her through the glass wall. You're afraid that I'm not human anymore. But you're also wondering if this enhancement could be replicated safely in others. The accuracy of his reading was disturbing. Dr. Kresh had indeed been thinking. Exactly those thoughts. Dr. Vex appeared beside her, tablet in hand. We need to document this. Enhanced sensory perception and apparent telepathic abilities. It's not telepathy, Reed said, even though Dr. Vex had spoken quietly. I can sense emotional states, not thoughts. It's like being able to smell fear or see happiness. Through the wall opening, Zethkar spoke again. Can you sense me? Reed's expression softened. Yes, relief, satisfaction, and something else. Protectiveness, maybe. It feels warm. Zethkar's scale shifted to lighter shades, a visible sign of contentment among his people. Dr. Kresh realized the implications immediately. If Reed could sense emotions across species barriers, he had become something unprecedented in galactic society. Most species could barely understand each other's basic communications, let alone their emotional states. Reed, we need to run physical tests as well, she said. Blood work, neural scans, cellular analysis. Of course. But I want Zethkar present during the tests. That's still not possible. The contamination protocols are unnecessary, Reed interrupted. I can sense the organism in my system. It's stable now. It's not spreading or mutating. And it's not contagious in its current form. Dr. Vex checked his readings. He's correct. All signs of active pathogen transmission ceased yesterday. Dr. Kresh made a decision that would change medical protocols throughout the galaxy. Very well. Zethkar, report to the medical bay. We'll open the isolation unit. 30 minutes later, Zethkar stood beside Reed's bed while medical equipment recorded every aspect of their interaction. The Valthari looked relieved, but also curious about the changes in his partner. You look the same, Zethkar said. I feel different, though. Stronger. More aware. Reed stood up and stretched. The movement was fluid and controlled in ways that seemed beyond normal human ability. Dr. Kresh ran her initial tests. Reed's strength had increased by roughly 40%. His reflexes were faster than any human on record. His sensory capabilities exceeded those of most known species. But the most remarkable discovery came when they tested his emotional sensing ability. Dr. Vex, stand behind Reed where he cannot see you, Dr. Kresh instructed. Think about something that makes you happy. Reed closed his eyes. He's thinking about home? Family? There's joy mixed with longing. Dr. Vex looked startled. My daughter. I was thinking about my daughter's graduation ceremony last month. They tried the test with several staff members of different species. Reed accurately identified emotional states across the room, through walls, and even when the subjects tried to hide their feelings. This is impossible, Dr. Vex muttered. No known species has this kind of cross-species emotional perception. Maybe that's the point, Reed said. The research ship was working on something called Project Bridge. Maybe they were trying to create a being who could understand all species on an emotional level. Dr. Kresh reviewed the fragmented files they had recovered from the research vessel. The project had been attempting to solve a critical problem in galactic society. The communication barriers that led to misunderstandings and conflicts between species. If that's true, she said, then you might be the prototype for a new kind of diplomat. Reed laughed. I'm a salvage operator, not a diplomat. You were a salvage operator, Zethkar corrected. Now you are something more. Over the following days, they discovered the full extent of Reed's new abilities. He could sense emotional states accurately up to 50 meters away. He could identify deception, fear, aggression. and other critical emotional information that could prevent conflicts or misunderstandings. But perhaps most importantly, the enhancement seemed to require emotional stability to function properly. When Reed was calm and supported, his abilities worked perfectly. When he was stressed or isolated, they became unreliable or even painful. The organism needs a psychological anchor, Dr. Kresh explained to the station commander. Reed's bond with Zethkar provides the emotional stability that keeps the enhancement stable. So the Velthari's breach of protocol was actually necessary for the success of the integration. Not just necessary, it was the key factor. Without that emotional support, Reed would have died or the enhancement would have driven him insane. The station commander looked at the test results with amazement. And this could be replicated? Potentially, but only with subjects who have strong emotional support systems. The enhancement requires the kind of deep bonds that humans seem particularly good at forming. What they didn't say, but all understood, was that Reed's transformation represented something uniquely human. Other species formed alliances and partnerships, but few created the kind of emotional bonds that could sustain such radical biological changes. Reed had survived and thrived through the enhancement because humans didn't just work together. They cared for each other in ways that transcended logic or efficiency. As Reed prepared to leave the medical bay, Dr. Kresh asked him one final question. What do you want to do with these new abilities? Reed looked at Zethkar, then back at the doctor. The same thing I've always done. Help people. Save lives. Find things that are lost. But now he would do it with capabilities that could change how species understood each other throughout the galaxy. And he would do it with a partner who had proven that some bonds were stronger than any protocol or barrier. 3 months later, Dr. Kresh stood in the same medical bay where Reed had been treated. But now the isolation units looked very different. Gone were the sterile white walls and sealed chambers. In their place were comfortable rooms with large windows, communication systems, and even small living areas where family members or close friends could stay during treatment. The new companion protocol had become standard practice throughout Alliance medical facilities. The discovery that emotional support could be medically necessary had revolutionized treatment for dozens of species. The psychological healing rates have improved by an average of 60%. Dr. Vex reported as he showed visiting medical staff through the facility. Physical recovery time has decreased by 40% for social species. But the most dramatic changes were still being studied. 3 other patients had successfully undergone enhancement integration using variants of the organism. That had changed Reed. All had required the presence of close emotional companions to survive that process. The Alliance Medical Council had initially been skeptical of the new protocols. Allowing families and friends into sterile medical environments violated centuries of established practice. But the results were undeniable. Patients with strong emotional support systems healed faster, survived better, and adapted more successfully to medical treatments. Dr. Kresh's research had identified something that medical science had overlooked for generations: the social species. Isolation itself was a form of medical trauma that interfered with healing. The hole that Zethkar had carved through the station wall had been preserved as a reminder. A small plaque beside it read, "Sometimes the best medicine is knowing someone cares enough to dig through walls to reach you." Meanwhile, Reed and Zethkar had returned to their salvage operations. But their work had expanded far beyond simple cargo recovery. Their ship, the Persistence, drifted silently beside a massive derelict in the Arcturus system. The dead vessel had been a luxury cruise liner, carrying passengers from 12 different species when it suffered catastrophic engine failure. Hundreds had died in the initial explosion, but sensor readings suggested that some might have survived in the sealed emergency sections. Life signs are faint, Zethkar reported from the pilot's chair. Multiple species, but I cannot determine their condition from this distance. Reed stood behind him, his enhanced senses already reaching out toward the derelict. There are survivors. I can sense fear, desperation, but also hope. They know someone is here to help. This was Reed's new role in salvage operations. His emotional sensing ability could locate survivors who were still alive but might not be detectable by normal sensors. He could sense their psychological state and determine who needed immediate help versus who could wait for rescue. 18 individuals in the forward emergency compartment, Reed said, closing his eyes to focus on the emotional signatures. Mixed species. Most are calm, but there's one who is panicking. Probably claustrophobic reaction to the confined space. Navigation hazards? Zethkar asked. Reed extended his senses toward the derelict structure. This was another new ability. He could sometimes sense the emotions of crew members who had died in specific locations, giving him insights into what had happened during the disaster. The central corridor is blocked by debris from the engine explosion, but the emergency shaft on Deck 7 is clear. No radiation leaks in that section. They worked together with the efficiency they had developed over years of partnership, but now enhanced by Reed's new capabilities. Zethkar could navigate hazards with precision while Reed identified the best routes to reach survivors and assess their psychological condition. The rescue took 6 hours. 18 beings from 5 different species, all grateful to be alive. But what struck Reed most was how his enhanced emotional sensing had helped him understand each species' needs during the rescue. The Altarian children had needed constant reassurance. The elderly Centauri couple had required dignity and respect during their evacuation. The young Terran adults had responded well to humor and banter that distracted them from their fear. Reed's ability to sense what each person needed emotionally had made the rescue smoother and less traumatic for everyone involved. This is the 47th successful rescue since your enhancement, Zethkar noted as they delivered the survivors to a medical station. Your abilities have saved more lives than any salvage team in Alliance history. Reed watched the families reuniting with their rescued loved ones through the docking port window. It's not just the abilities, though. It's having someone who won't let protocols or rules stop them from doing what's right. Zethkar's scales shifted to warm golden tones, his equivalent of a smile. Your species has a saying about this, yes? No one left behind? That's right. Even when the walls are too thick and the rules say it's impossible. Their conversation was interrupted by an incoming communication from Alliance Command. Admiral Chun appeared on their screen, her expression serious. Reed, Zethkar, we have a situation that requires your unique capabilities. Reed straightened. Alliance Command only contacted them directly for the most challenging cases. There's a research station in the Void Nebula that's gone silent. The facility was working on enhanced communication systems for deep space exploration. We lost contact 4 days ago. What makes this different from a standard rescue operation? Zethkar asked. Admiral Chun hesitated. The station was using enhanced organisms similar to the one that changed. Reed, if something went wrong with their experiments, we need someone who can sense the emotional state of any survivors and determine if they're still themselves. Reed understood immediately. If the research station had been working with enhancement organisms, the survivors might have been changed in ways that made them dangerous or unstable. His emotional sensing could determine if rescued individuals were still mentally sound or if the enhancements had affected their psychological state. We'll take the job, Reed said without consulting Zethkar. He knew his partner would agree. Be careful, Admiral Chun warned. The Void Nebula is dangerous, even for enhanced individuals. And if the station's experiments went wrong, you might be walking into something that could affect your own enhancement. After the communication ended, Zethkar set course for the Void Nebula. This could be dangerous for you specifically, he said. The organisms might interact with your existing enhancement in unpredictable ways. Reed considered this. His enhancement was stable now, but exposure to related organisms might trigger changes. The risk was real. You taught me something during my recovery, Reed said. Sometimes the most important thing is being there when someone needs help, regardless of the protocols or the risks. Zethkar's scales shifted to deeper blues, colors that indicated pride and satisfaction. I learned that from you, Reed. Your species does not abandon others, even when logic suggests you should. As the Persistence entered hyperspace toward the Void Nebula, Reed reflected on how much had changed since his enhancement. His abilities had saved hundreds of lives and revolutionized medical treatment for social species throughout the Alliance. But the most important discovery wasn't about enhanced biology or emotional sensing. It was about the power of refusing to give up on someone you care about. Zethkar had dug through 15 meters of station wall because he believed Reed was worth saving. That act of stubborn loyalty had enabled Reed's successful transformation and created new possibilities for cooperation between species. Now they were heading into danger together, just as they always had. But this time, Reed's enhanced abilities and their proven partnership might save not just individual lives, but entire ways of understanding what different species could accomplish when they truly supported each other. The nebula ahead glowed with dangerous radiation and electromagnetic storms that would challenge their ship systems. But Reed felt no fear. He could sense Zethkar's steady determination beside him, and he knew that whatever they found at the research station, they would face it together. Some bonds, Reed had learned, were stronger than walls, stronger than protocols, and stronger than any enhancement biology could provide. And sometimes, those bonds were exactly what the galaxy needed most.